Welcome to the Doom Kitchen. This is not a news show. It's a talk show. We do not give financial, legal, medical, or any kind of advice. We are not responsible for the actions of our listeners. You are responsible for you. If anything offends you, we were only joking. Promise.
Welcome to the Doom Kitchen. Today I have an in real life friend, Mike from the EasyPeasy podcast, Mike the Polymath. Welcome to the show, Mike. Tell everybody a little something about yourself.
Well, what's going on, y'all? Glad to be here. Second time on, I guess, so is the Doom Kitchen like part of Burn Babylon Burn, or is it a whole different thing?
Burn Babylon Burn is the news show where I talk about the week in current events and just scuttlebutt. And the Doom Kitchen is where I get a guest or I grab a friend and we do a deep dive on a subject and just kind of go hard on that. So
cool.
Well, so that's the difference.
I thought I knew what I was getting myself into here, but like we've already discussed, we're doing kind of like a swap cast, so I'm going to share this one on my feed too. But like you said, I'm the host of the EasyPeasy podcast. I'm also the owner and founder of the EasyPeasy Garden Solutions business, where I take care of backyard vegetable gardens, build backyard gardens, berry patches, small backyard orchards, things like that. Me and Andy, we go back to Childerberg last spring, and I think we established it's probably been 6 months since I've talked to you. Last time I saw you, you were here in Indianapolis, and we got together in person, and that was pretty fucking cool, man. Oh, you know what?
Yeah.
I already dropped an F-bomb. I was watching your I was watching your turn of the calendar. Your New Year's show, and how you guys made it like 40 minutes in without dropping any F-bombs, and I just couldn't hardly make it 40 seconds, so sorry about that.
It's okay. I mean, it's really just toggling a thing, and some of the people that find my show on the index don't. So there's a podcast index, and it goes out to a bunch of different carriers, and some of them won't carry things that have explicit in there, but you have, I mean, if you are explicit, you probably should put that on there.
Yeah. I mark all my shit explicit because I can't help
fair
myself.
Enough. Yeah. Here's our nice gardening guy talking shit. Just
well, man, I used to have a better like filter, and these days it's just not so easy. I don't know.
Well, you talk about a ton more than gardening and getting set up. You've got a lot of talk about ideas and everything, and I think one of the most important things, and I said it before actually in that episode, and I get it from a lot of sources that I'm into, is that when you're building some kind of community, you want to find people with shared values and shared morality. So one thing, you can go out to a place like we did and meet up at a cool spot like Childerberg and find a lot of great people with a lot of the same mindset. You could go to no agenda meetups. I know you go to a ton of those.
I've been to a few. I've missed the last couple in my area, I'm ashamed to say, but there's one tomorrow, so I'll be at that.
Oh, nice. Lucky
sure.
you.
I hope it's tomorrow, not today. If it's today, I'm gonna miss it, for this. But
I've only made it to 2 of them, and they're so awesome. Just the great people that you meet, and that's a cool thing about what I do for a living, is I'm all over the country, and I've met people from various Telegram groups and No Agenda and Media Monarchy and all the podcasts that I listen to. So I'm trying to meet up with the community. I've met several people from Pete Quinones's group, and it's really cool. Just hang out with people that like the same show that you do and usually you share several of the values.
Yeah, man, I'm like really hoping to get my show to the point where maybe there's, easy peasy meetups, like it's kind of a pipe dream of mine to have Easy Peasy Fest, right? To host something here in central Indiana where, it's something akin to what Childerberg was, with, just a bunch of good people getting together, sharing ideas, sharing, know-how, sharing drinks, sharing smoke, whatever, like having a good time. And, I'm sure I'm just repeating something that has been said 100 times before, but we can get to know a million people online, but it really does like make a difference to get to know somebody face to face, shaking hands. And clearly like they tried to kind of take that from us. So
Right.
like it makes it even more imperative of us to make that a big priority and make sure that they can't ever take that from us again. I'm not as active on social media as I maybe could be, but I am fairly active on Instagram, and I shared a Bible verse. I'm not terribly religious at the moment, but I still find, truth in scripture. And I shared, let me see if I can pull it up real quick, but basically talking about not having false idols. And because I saw a Babylon Bee meme that made me laugh, where it was like, conservative, like maybe it was boomers, but like debate whether or not the vaccine is the actual blood of Fauci or just figurative, and it made me laugh. And so I shared after that, I shared this Bible verse. Let me see. It might be gone from my story at this point. Don't you hate that? But basically it was talking about like gather together and assemble. For those who carry false idols made of wood are ignorant and pray to gods that cannot save. It was something along those. That's a bit of a
paraphrase.
Paraphrase. Thank you. But it struck me in that like gather together and assemble. Like that is one of our chief sort of prerogatives, imperatives.
It's part of the First Amendment.
Yeah, and like to worship gods that cannot save. That's Fauci, right? Like I made like underneath the little Bible verse, I had this little like animation where it was a crowd of people praying to Fauci, like, save us, Dr. Fauci. He was the false idol. And there's still a lot of people that listen to him, man. And it's crazy. But anyways,
I'd like to see if he's made out of wood. We'll do the Monty Python test and see.
Yeah. Very, very small rocks. Yeah. Oh, I love that shit. But yeah, man, it's just crazy. Like, I'm glad you reached out, because it's always good to talk to somebody where you're already like at the same kind of level of understanding.
I was hoping that we would run into each other again, because I end up through Indiana a lot. It's the crossroads.
Mm-hmm.
And since then I haven't been to Indiana. Well, that part of Indiana, at least,
Sure.
one time then. And it's really weird like that. But yeah, or if I am in a place, sometimes I'm just behind schedule and I have to just jam as hard as I can. But in this case, they just haven't put me there. And you never know what goes on with the road. That's part of the thing I like about this job, is you never know where you're going to be.
Mm-hmm.
But I end up living in places sometimes for 2 or 3 days, and it's weird because you start to blossom a little life in this new place, and then it's gone.
Yeah. Well, it's I figured you wouldn't necessarily be an indie without hollering if you had the time. So I wouldn't doubt it. But that's cool, man. Like I'll look forward to the next time you do come through town.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. It's always fun to see a friend,
For sure. And let's see, there's a thing. So I'm currently looking for land space,
Mm-hmm.
most likely somewhere in Texas, just because that's where my entire family is, and I'd like to make that pretty convenient. And plus, I want to be close to one of our terminals, so that really means it's either Texas, Salt Lake, Wyoming, stuff like that. Just
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So I need to find something in those kind of areas, and build out from there as far as as making new friends and finding people that are probably already in that area. So I'm thinking I'm gonna jam to Childerberg again this year, and I hope that you'll be there. And that's
Planning on it. Yep.
yeah, I figured you would be.
It was too much fun to miss. The only reason I could come up with not to go would be financial. But there's a good chance I'll be able to, carpool this time around. So hopefully that'll cut the costs. It was a lot of gas, man. It was a lot of gas.
Yeah, you brought the
there.
whole setup.
I did, but it was so worth it. And that's a funny time of year because it's right after my sort of spring rush. So I'm like, I make a bunch of money, and so it was easy enough to talk myself into. Later in the summer, when the money all of a sudden wasn't so flush, it's kind of like, like these expenses add up. But anyways, that's the nature of my business. It's very feast and famine, and when the money's there, to hell with it. Let's go like see the community, and because it is invaluable. It's invaluable. The number of friends I made, a handful, like in particular, but yeah, it's too cool.
Yeah, there's so many great people out there, and that's another thing about the wooden idol and how that wooden idol divided us, is that we got to see who our real friends are. There's people that won't talk to me anymore, and I mean, good riddance. If you're hate watching, that's what I said, good riddance. Because I don't want to deal with anybody that wants me to inject something that I don't want to inject. I'm just not going to deal with those kind of people in my life whatsoever. I don't want those people around. Those people are dangerous, not only to me, but everybody else.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. But it's tough though, right? Like, especially when it's family. That's been kind of part of what I've been dealing with. So it's hard to like outright just, I don't know, disregard people, but at the same time, it's a matter of like self dignity. It's like, self-respect, to kind of draw this line and say like, hey, I've been pushed around here, and it's something that it's too bad it's gone on so goddamn long, because the longer it goes on, the harder it is to come to a resolution with people. And it's really a shame, because like, what good was that debate for anybody? Like, it didn't
we know
do anybody any good. Nobody won. Nobody won, right? That's an argument where everybody lost, even those that were correct. Maybe especially those, I don't know. Everybody fucking lost. Nobody. I was about to say nobody was right, but that's the problem, isn't it? Like, we were right. We were right. Because our argument was really simple. Like, no, thank you. Like, leave me be.
And they still haven't even figured it out. I mean, the athletes are dropping like flies right now, and I, as a joke I saw, is that they're flies are dropping like athletes, because they're just passing out on the field commonly. I saw a clip yesterday where a guy's documented over 300, and he says that that's just what he has documented. He knows of multiple thousands. So
I'm sure you saw the Canadian news lady who
Oh yeah.
kind of stroked out or something during the middle of a live broadcast, and they cut the feed. I was listening. I know you're a No Agenda fan, so you probably heard, they were talking about it on the most recent episode, but they bring up a good point where it's like, they're kind of making a joke of it, but it's true. They're like, that's right, when it was getting juicy. Like, that's good television. Like, you put murder and like, rape and freaking violence of all sorts on the news. And like, now we've got something real live on television, and you're going to cut the feed and like, and not give us any fucking answers about it. Just kind of like brush it away. Oh, like nothing to see here. And, it's kind of the same thing with Damar Hamlin, where even though it was so prevalent, like everybody was talking about it, you weren't allowed to talk about it. You were allowed to say, oh, like prayers to the Hamlin family. Like, my prayers are with Damar, blah, blah, blah. But you can't ask the most obvious question without everybody saying you're jumping to conclusions and you're, just a crazy conspiracy theorist, right? It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, they still haven't realized it yet. And
Yeah.
that's pretty scary. I'm seeing I think most people are just tired of it, and they wanted to move on from the beginning. They just kind of got roped in, and they didn't have the courage and agency to be like us, so they just went along with it because that's what they were supposed to do. And I feel slightly bad for those people, but at the same time, I've dealt with this long enough that I've just decided that everybody that did it, they made their choice, and I'm sorry they made that choice, but I'm not going to be too nice about it, not after everything else.
I feel that. Like, I feel like I went through a phase where it was just pure anger, right? And it was very easy in the anger phase to be angry and to speak and to use that anger. And then I kind of like shifted into just being like sad about it, like the longer it went on, the just realization of like the depth of brainwashing and programming, and it just made me kind of sad. And now it's kind of like, all right, like we can't just be sad, like we got to get to work. The anger was useful as fuel, but like sadness does the opposite. What's a healthy kind of like medium? Like I don't know, like a resignation, a acceptance of the fact that you just can't save like everybody. You can't convince everybody. Right. You can't take everybody along with you on this journey. Like they're going to do what they're going to do.
That's spiritual.
And so be it. Right.
So that's spiritual as well, because like I've come to a lot of conclusions in the last year spiritually, and I would love to take people along with me as well, but the thing is, it's your choice. You have to accept Jesus Christ. That's where an individual stands. They have to accept that. If they don't, then they're kind of screwed. So you can't make them follow you, and you don't want to try to make them follow you, because then what does that get you? Because if you start trying to force your belief system on people, you become something terrible, even if it is for their own good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess since you like brought it up, I already said at one point, like, I'm not terribly religious at this point, but that's like kind of not necessarily true. I'm not religious in the way that I used to be. I was raised very, very like gung-ho, evangelical, non-denominational rock and roll Jesus, like mega church style, fucking it, like Jesus, rock and roll, and there's like a shallowness to that culture that I started to become kind of aware of over time. And just certain things that really rubbed me wrong. And in a way, like it was programming in its own right, that I had to work through a lot of it, especially like the youth group stuff. There was good and there was not so good aspects. But what I'd say now is I'm like very much like appealed to by an idea of a simpler Christianity. I find scriptures compelling, and like certain people I listen to, coming from maybe like the more orthodox Christian spaces, make a lot of sense. And like, they seem like hardcore Christians, which I had never really seen before. What I saw was like pop culture Christian. And now I'm like kind of seeing that there's like a more, there's a deeper pool to swim into. And the simple Christianity, like there ain't much to it, right? Love thy neighbor, right? And it very much is compatible with my anarchism. And I saw like a meme that just rung true to me, where it said, it's easy to love Jesus. The hard part's loving Judas. And I'm like, damn, like that kind of is what we're going through right now. The hard part is loving those who did us wrong. And like, if there's something radical in the Bible, it's the fact that like Jesus like kissed Judas's feet knowing that he had been betrayed. It's like, that's some wild shit, man. And that's really hard profound to do. It's really hard to do, which is why it's like, as much as I want to be like, yeah, fuck them, like, let's just move on without them, I still try to hold out hope that like, yeah, we need to like lead by example. You can't force anybody to think the same way you think. But I'm not going to like turn my back on people quite yet. Right.
Right. And those same Orthodox guys that you're talking about, like Buck Johnson and
right.
and Matt, why can't I remember Matt's last name? And Jay Dyer, of course. All of these guys, they really resonated with me recently as well. That's not necessarily the path that I'm on. I'm on a path toward Jesus, but I don't know exactly the right way. And I know that the path is narrow, but I'm going in the right direction. I know that I'm going to find that path at some point, the narrow one.
Okay. So I again, like the different words for the same thing. Like to me, the simple Christian message is to follow the path, to follow the way. Like some people, you ever heard people refer to it as like the way, right?
Yeah, it used to be called that. That was the early name for and the word Christian is kind of new, and that means that we're trying to imitate Christ, and I mean, no one, even the best person can't do that. I mean, we're we can't imitate Christ to the level that he is, but the whole point is to try and then go through him for everything that you can't.
Well, I like thinking of it as the way as opposed to like the path, because it seems more attainable. It's kind of like if you're off the path, how do you find the path? But like the way, like there's a right way and a wrong way, right? Like, are you going the right way? It's a little more like,
yeah, that's a real big deal whenever you do what I do for a living.
I believe it. But yeah, like I don't have any firm like convictions. I think, like I think the way is a good way to imagine it for me, because it kind of overlaps with like Taoism and other philosophies. Sort of, I've always considered myself like a pragmatist, and there's a lot in sort of this like, how do I say, narrow, like focused intent, like trying to accomplish something good and recognizing that there's a whole lot of things trying to pull you other directions. That's the Christian mentality. That's following the Tao. Call it what you will, but I think either you work towards being good or you inevitably become a weapon of evil. It's the Matrix thing. Anybody that's not awake can be turned into an agent against us. It's so clear after what we've just seen the last couple years. It's ridiculous how clear it is.
Yeah, it's really amazing how that movie has so many really useful analogies whenever you find out how shallow the people that made it are.
Yeah.
Or became. I think maybe the success caused them to become that way, because they in 1999, I'm sure that those guys were the coolest dudes to talk to.
Yeah, I think that happens a lot. Like, right. You strike gold as a poor artist, like a starving artist, and then you never create anything quite as good after that.
Yeah, but
I hope that doesn't happen to guys like you and me,
Right. Well, first we have to get to the top of the mountain first.
Step one.
We'll
Step one. Yeah.
I mean, they might have, but I haven't seen a good Strokes album since they came out 20 years ago, and then what now? I haven't seen anything new. I could be wrong. You guys might be, but when that came out, that was huge, and it might have been manufactured. I think almost everything is really.
Well, it makes me actually think of some of the kind of big figures in our movement, if you will, or maybe not necessarily our movement, but in the broader culture. I'm thinking of Jordan Peterson and Joe Rogan in particular, and how both of those dudes, I think they've had their kind of ups and downs. Feel free to if you have a different opinion, let me know. But Jordan Peterson kind of went a little batshit for a minute and kind of lost some of his credibility. And I think it's because he went a little almost too close to the sun and got burnt. Right. And I think Rogan's done a better job of keeping his steadiness, but I see a different flaw in his character where he's almost unwilling to fully commit to the truth. It's the last week or two, I feel like half of his episodes, the guys on there seem like fucking spooks, man. And it almost seems like he's trying too hard to play the monkey in the middle, right? As opposed to just being okay, y'all are wrong, y'all are right. He's trying to still appeal to both sides. And I guess I don't know, I'm just kind of talking out of my butt here, but it seems like there is a way to achieve a level of influence and maybe do it without going totally crazy. But at the same time, don't be half-assing it. Don't be a wuss. Don't appeal to the evil that is so clearly there,
Jordan's doing everything the way he's supposed to right now, and they're still taking him up on some sensitivity training or some nonsense like that in order to keep some license he doesn't even use anymore. But but that's also part of his character. So we can see that he's still being persecuted, so that plays into his brand. And this doesn't hurt him one bit whatsoever. He's sold out. He's pushing an agenda of dangerous people. He's pushing the agenda of censorship right now, and he's trying to show that he's still being censored at the same time. So watch that guy. Don't trust him ever again. He was nice for some philosophy 101. If you want the basics, you can learn a lot from him. But if you keep following him, then you're gonna become a victim of the people who bought him.
So who do you think is pulling his strings? I'm curious.
The people that pull lots of strings that I don't really talk about.
So just like fueling, you think he's just kind of at this point like fueling the flames of the culture war instead of doing anything of like real substance, or is it?
Well, see, he works for Shapiro now, right? That's who he works for. He's pushing the Anti-Defamation League's agenda. I mean, you don't have to go too far to see who's running Jordan at this point. He has things where he calls out Christians and he calls out Muslims. What group is he not calling out?
So he's just being divisive for divisiveness sake, I guess.
He's a puppet. He's what did I call it last week? He's a shekel puppet. So he's got a little coin slot on his back, and they put their shekels in, wind him up, and he goes. So that's who he's working.
It almost seems like that is like I don't want to say inevitability, but like a lot of these figures seem to be co-opted, like slowly but surely. I mean, what do you think about Rogan? Do you think he's like controlled opposition? Like he's just the I
think he is in a way, in the way of the people that produce his show, line up his guests and everything like that, can kind of feed him everything, but he's going to be Joe at the end of the day, and he's got fuck you money, so he can walk away from the table anytime. But
I do feel like he tends to feel authentic, but like you said, it almost seems like the progression of guests feels orchestrated by somebody,
So what I think it is he doesn't want to lose what he's got. And so he's got so much, he wants to hang on to it. He knows that he can lose it in a second, and be, all these hate campaigns that came out against him over the N-word last year. It seems like ancient history. I think it was only a year ago. But they had all these things trying to cancel him, and well, no, it was 2 years ago, and it didn't work out. And you can see that, they can just form these campaigns, whatever. And I don't think he's necessarily scared, but he wants to keep what he has.
I feel like he's like playing the radical moderate role, which I think is good. Like it's a useful thing. I said on like my last episode, second to last episode, I said like, thank God for Joe Rogan. Like honestly, because he carried on a conversation that no one else was willing to carry on. Whether or not he got everything perfect, I don't care. Like, I'm glad that was out there and part of the common narrative. But it's like, as time goes on, is he serving that role still, or is he kind of another smokescreen at times? It's kind of hard to say.
Well, he's definitely on the Mount Rushmore of podcasting. And I mean, he's one of the prime people there. And this format wouldn't exist the way it does right now if it wasn't for shows like him, people like him. So I'm glad that he's still on, and I'll tune in if he's got somebody that I want to see. But somebody, you've made it if you're on his show, if you're one of his guests, whatever you're doing, you become a household name the second that you're sitting in that chair. So, and I think that's part of the reason why they took control of his booking. And they may or may not have taken control of his booking, but it seems like it.
It just seems like people are getting like weaseled in lately. Like there's been multiple like intelligence, people just in the last few weeks, and it's kind of like, why are we hearing? I mean, it makes sense, I guess, because they're trying to counter all of the criticisms that they're getting, CIA, FBI, they want to come out and say, oh no, like it's not that bad. But I don't buy it. Like, just because you're on Joe Rogan's show doesn't mean so. It's like I kind of 90% trust Joe Rogan, but 0% trust most of his guests, or at least certain ones.
So he had Peter Hotez on, and this is an old clip, but it recently resurfaced because this guy is some some bureaucrat that's supposedly in charge of health, big time pusher of vaccines, big time person who says that we're dangerous because we spread misinformation about vaccines. And we're just telling you what's happening. And I said at the beginning of the show with the disclaimer, I don't give advice. I'm not an advice giver. I'm just observing and telling you my opinion. That's what I do. But anyway, Hotez gets on there, and Rogan gave him a little bit of pushback and found out that Hotez is a junk food junkie and he's telling everybody about their health. But having that little rat up there, and he is a very tiny man, and he might end up being the guy that replaces Fauci. But having that little rat up there and elevating him, just that says something is controlling the booking. And when you're getting mouthpieces like that.
Yeah. I try not to like think that everything is conspiracy, right? But a lot of it feels like it might be.
See, I'm so past that. It all is. It's just yeah. And I guess there's a few things that naturally occur, but I feel like they control the way that it's leaked out to us. They control the media so they are able to push agendas. It seems like this weird story that came out this week about the 6-year-old shooting the teacher, which is just crazy.
Yeah, like what? Yeah, I barely looked into it. I didn't look into it at all. I just heard about it. So tell me what you know.
Well, I know just the surface of it, but but as far as the way that it's come out and all the gun legislation that's coming through this week, like Chicago / Illinois in general is getting bans on everything, something along the lines of if it loads a round after a round is fired, then it's not allowed in Illinois, that's just insane. So anything that is semi-automatic, it's just banned, and that's almost everything. And
I hear a lot of sheriffs are pushing back on that though, so that's encouraging.
Right.
But
yeah, well, we're about to see it all. Kind of all of this stuff is about to come to a head. The ATF just came out with a short-barreled rifle designation for if you use a what is it called? It's a brace, but if you put this brace on your pistol, then it becomes a rifle according to them. And short-barreled rifles, they don't give you any sort of advantage necessarily. It's just something that gangsters used to use.
Concealability would be the
right
argument. That would be the argument. But as someone who's who knows something about this, like it's still pretty bulky, man. Like you're not gonna hide that under anything less than like a really long trench cloak or whatever. And it, like you said, it really doesn't give you an advantage tactically.
Well, the short barreled, I mean, you'd rather have a long barreled rifle, but the thing is short barreled without a brace / what they're calling a stock. I won't call it a stock because it's a brace. And you get slightly the aiming advantage of just having another place to touch the rifle. In your shoulder, you're going to have a much steadier aim if you have more ways to touch the rifle. But I don't think
an argument. It seems like an argument for the safe. That's more like an accurate rifle is a safer rifle, right?
That and so are we going to start banning things because they're more accurate? because that seems a little screwed up.
Yeah, like
So.
do you want collateral in the event that these get used? The thing is, it all goes back to the flawed argument that like you should never expect to have to use these for what they were in fact made for.
Right. The only thing I ever really want to shoot is paper, but you know,
it was designed as a weapon of war. Like, we'll be honest about it. Like, fuck this argument about it's a sporting weapon or whatever. It's a, it's for, it's, just for sport and hunting and nothing else. No, it's to repel fascists. It's to stop agents of an unfriendly force. And we'll leave it at that, and it really does. It pisses me off because it's like, so you're saying that if the barrel is X length, I'm cool. Everything's kosher. If I am half an inch shorter, I can spend 10 freaking years in jail. Like, how's that fair? How's that make any damn sense? It's not even, it's so disproportionate.
They just want you to get a stamp. And so they're looking for more excuses for a stamp. And so I'm going through right now. I'm trying to get a suppressor, and I bought the thing at the end of September, and it's just floating around in legislation hell of bureaucrats just sitting there, deciding if I can have this thing that I bought, because I paid for it. I've paid for it in full, but they got to decide whether I can have it, and I paid them extra so that I could buy it. I paid them extra money so that I could buy something from somebody else.
Tell me if it's true or not, but I saw something about like with this change in law with the braces, blah, blah, blah. They're doing like apply in the next 90 days and you get your tax stamp for free. No $200 charge. Is that legit?
Yeah, I think that it's within 120 days. And yeah, that they have this period where if you register, and that's the whole thing is you shouldn't have to register these things. Then again, all your information is in a database. I guarantee you, they've been collecting. They know exactly what you got, and I'm sure of that. So, because when they start knocking on your door, and that's really when it's too late. But when they start knocking on your door, they're going to tell you what you have, or they'll ask you what you have, and then they'll catch you in a lie if you do lie. But sketchy.
Well, it's like kind of pisses me off because, maybe this is a stretch, but it almost feels similar to having to pay taxes despite them printing, gobs and gobs of money.
Right.
The fact that they're saying we can give you these tax stamps that you supposedly need to be supposedly legitimate. We can give them to you for free, but we just choose to charge you $200. Right. But to try to play nice because we're changing the rules a little bit and, to ease your suffering and your, inconvenience, we're going to let you have this one for free. It's like, it's just kind of insulting, I think, to one's intelligence. Like the fact that you can print all this money and still charge me for my little bit of taxation is insulting to my intelligence.
Right. And if they were anywhere near about being responsible with weapons, they wouldn't have left a whole shit ton of over in Afghanistan and printing the money so that they can support a war in a country that most people didn't even know the name of a year ago.
Yeah, you got nothing against a AK-47 in the hands of a 16-year-old Ukrainian boy, but a 20-year-old American's not allowed to have a AR-15. It's like, I guess, a 20-year-old American can have an AR-15 some places, not all places though. And it's just, it seems awfully hypocritical. They're clearly just afraid of their own people. Right?
I see it like this. It's as simple as this. At any age that you're allowed to legally acquire property, you should be legally allowed to defend it.
Sure.
Yeah.
So does that include an automobile?
Yeah,
I'd say so.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I don't know. Like,
I think everybody needs to be responsible with what they have. But but yeah, I wouldn't be sad if the age got younger. But like I said, everybody has to be responsible and not let 6-year-olds get a hold of stuff and let it get into their classroom. That's just insane.
yeah, that is crazy.
That feels so manufactured to me. And
well, you gotta wonder. I mean, was the gun from? Do they claim to know where the gun came from? Was it the teachers? Was it the parent of the kids? Was it?
I haven't even got that detail. I just saw the crazy English woman who's not English. She does not descend from England. Look at her complexion. So, she went from wherever she came from, India probably looks like, to England and then to the United States. It's like so I responded because I'm mean. I said, if you don't like our gun laws here, go back to where you came from. And then when you get there, go back to where you really came from. But I mean, like that.
Damn. Yeah. Well, I guess I don't know about this story. It sounds like if it's real, it's like just a tragedy, like just a random fluke tragedy. And, frankly, it's just not our responsibility to expect to be able to stop every freak accident. Shit happens, like, but it is, whoever's gun that was negligent and should be held responsible.
Right.
Period.
Right. Whether it's the parent or it could have even been the teacher. That's another thing. I don't know. I doubt it, but yeah, I don't know the full story. And I haven't really delved deep into stories at this point in the week. I'm gonna go on a news binge later because tomorrow I'm doing Burn Babylon Burn with I got Rob Brisky coming in, and I love episodes that I do with him because he knows another angle of stuff that I've seen, so it's really always fun. Yeah. But
cool.
But yeah, let's see. I was just talking about a little while ago, actually, in the conversation that I'm looking for a spot to live, right. And what should I do as someone who's never home as far as getting something going that will, just be there and not just, get all gross and everything like that. I'm thinking blackberries is pretty good because they kind of maintain themselves, things that maintain themselves.
Yeah, I'd just focus on perennials in general. I mean, it depends on what works where you're at, but like, I guess Texas has some good soil. Texas has a lot of really crummy soil. So if you do buy a place, like, first and foremost, when you're shopping, you want to assess for like the kind of 3 priorities are water, access, and structures. So do you have usable structures, i.e. a house and a workshop, barn, something, outbuilding? How easy is it to get from the road, like, to the back of the property? That's your access. And then water, like, is there a pond? How much rain are you getting? Is there a creek? How does water flow across the landscape when the rains come? If it all just kind of, it all depends on the individual property, what you're going to do with it. But if you have a good basis of those kind of 3 elements, over time, you can build your soil. You could basically have like whatever you want. If it were me, I would plant fruit trees and berries. If it was something you wanted to walk away from for 2 weeks at a time and not worry about, forget about animals, forget about really like vegetables to a large extent. You can do some things, but yeah, just perennial fruit and like nuts, you know.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of
And
sense.
I'd think about trying to look for a place where you could, you know, potentially hunt some game if you're far enough out, and like even if it's just small stuff like, you know,
Right. If you got a
squirrels and
nut tree,
whatever. But yeah,
the squirrels will just infest it, you know?
and
So
maybe you can invite in deer like over time, you know. Um, but a lot of what you want to be thinking about when you're shopping is like, what does this property, what is it adjacent to? Are there corridors for wildlife? Is there water, like storage on, you know, natural bodies of water on site? Um, all that stuff. Yeah, I would think seriously about drilling a core sample, because sometimes you might have 6 inches of decent soil, but it's like very, very near. There's very little subsoil, and then you just hit bedrock, in which case you're never going to have good trees. Like some places will have a couple feet of topsoil, some places will have 6 to 8 inches before just hitting bedrock. So it just depends.
So I've noticed that in South Texas, it seems like the trees only get a certain height. Is it just their age, or um is it something else? Is it how deep that they're allowed to get down?
It might be that, it might just be lack of water. Yeah, hard to say, but yeah, generally if it's dry and there's not a lot of topsoil, everything's just small. That's how it is, you know, in Utah where I was. It's like just scrubby little like 4 foot tall trees. But yeah, I wouldn't think about growing anything, frankly, if that's what you were buying. You know, I would just at that point maybe grow everything like indoors, you know, set up automated systems that can grow food with next to no daily maintenance, you know. But
That's a really cool idea.
yeah, there's different, you know, there's different stuff. You can have systems with fish that have, you know, salad greens growing in like a raft on the water, you know, growing in like IBC totes, which I'm sure you haul plenty of. You know, you cut the top out of an IBC tote, you stock it with some tilapia, you grow stuff, and there's kind of a cycle where you pump the water up through the plants, and the plants eat up some of the, you know, fish droppings, whatever. And the fish kind of nibble at the roots of the plants, and there's a little bit of a mutual benefit. You still have to feed, you know, feed the fish a little bit, but it's a cool way to grow food without having to do anything out in the hot Texas sun, you know. But certain areas of Texas are really nice. Just depends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so long as it's not filled with sticker burrs like our campsite was last year.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you even think about, I was shocked at Childerberg at how little all those deer were. So like all the deer were teeny tiny, like 2.5 foot tall deer. And I'm used to seeing like big boys, you know, and it's because they don't have much to eat, so they don't grow much, you know, they're just pygmy. They're stunted.
Yeah, in that region, they're like that. Yeah, I've seen a lot of small deer, especially like out where I'm at in this whole hill country region. But
well, you know,
yeah.
I was gonna say the one other thing I could say is you could think about doing greenhouses and stuff if you are in like a challenging environment. You know, it's a lot of investment, but setting up a greenhouse and hauling in a bunch of compost and kind of like containing your growing. That way you can put shade cloth over the greenhouse during the heat, you know, the heat of the summer, take it off in the winter. You can kind of control the environment more, keep it humid, you know, irrigate it. But you know, Texas, certain areas, you're almost shit out of luck just trying to like start a garden. It takes a lot of prep.
Yeah, and if I don't have time for that kind of prep, then it's not gonna, I'm not gonna get too much.
You might honestly be better off making friends with farmers in your general like area and just buying direct from them, right?
I really like the idea of having blackberries and pecans, just because I know that those grow almost everywhere in Texas.
Sure.
And
well, there you go.
And then you'll attract the kind of wildlife that you want at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and I shouldn't like discourage, you can take a pretty rough area and like improve it over time, but it takes years and years of soil improvement. So, but yeah, right. I mean, you're talking the right language as far as grow what works where you're at. It's as simple as that. Look around at
find
your
the place that already has it.
Yeah, like look at the neighborhood, see what everybody's doing. If people have gardens, cool. If they don't, there might be a reason. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's not enough water. I know that my dad had to get rid of a garden just because he wasn't able to water it at the rate that it needed. We had a big drought for a while, and then as soon as he takes the garden down, it rains.
Go figure. Yep. That's how it goes. It's like, the one day you don't bring your raincoat, that's the day it rains. Yep.
There's the nature, and then there's the Murphy's Law.
Yep. Well, I tell you, man, I'm like thinking about kind of what we brought this show up to begin with, like building community. And I guess I'm curious. So like, if you're thinking about shopping for land, do you have any strategy to like scope out sort of who's living there already? Or like, are you reaching out to people in your network and trying to see what's available near them? Like, how are you playing that?
I'm just measuring options right now. I don't think that I could get. I probably just can't get people to commit to it. But this is going to be one of those things. I'm going to build it. I'm going to make something, and then hopefully be able to attract a few people to it. But I'm going carefully over demographics and things like that, just so that I'm in a place that I'm gonna feel comfortable. And there's looking at the data, and then there's getting into it in reality and going out and seeing the neighborhood. And those can be very different things, but I'm gonna try to find a place that that is probably I certainly want a place that's red, and the only places that are blue are urban areas. Anyway, in Texas, that's just how it is. It's like every city is a blue dot, and then everything around it is red. So I just don't want I don't want people actively advancing socialism. I'd rather people that are trying to a little bit at least put the brakes on it, even though they haven't really figured it out.
Well, I'm kind of just thinking in terms of like strategy, and like, because I'm not going to be that far behind you. Hopefully, I'm hoping to get my hands on some land, and I'm kind of just playing the thought experiment of how I'd maybe search, and doing it efficiently to where I'm not just looking at every property on Zillow that looks interesting, but like maybe tapping into a more personal network and finding a place specific, or in a specific area. And I'm almost thinking about like the no agenda meetups, and you never know, like you go to something like that and you get talking to people, there might be somebody there that's got 100 acres of ranch land that might sell you 4 acres for a reasonable price, or, that's just kind of like speculating, but I'd almost rather buy a chunk of somebody else's land who's in my network, in my community, starting just there, as opposed to hoping to attract people just for you, from your network. Tapping into something that already exists could be worth doing. But I don't know.
Yeah. You know who Derek Rose is?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he's got these freedom cells, and that reminded me of that I need to check into that. And maybe there's somebody already in that network that is gonna suit whatever I'm going for anyway. So
Yeah.
I'm approved for a massive loan that I don't know how I'm ever going to be able to pay off. But you know, going from there is where I'm at this point. I'm happy that the bankers will take my credit, but you know, it's.
I assume you don't have to use the entire thing, do you?
Oh no, I don't intend to. I mean, I know. I'm trying to go for less than half of what I'm approved for because I know how the system is predatory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've almost been afraid to even try because, like, I figure they don't like a guy that's self-employed. Generally speaking, they want to see pay stubs. So I have no idea how it's going to go for me the day I do start hunting for property, but my hope would be just to pay straight up, you know, but that's a big endeavor. You got to make a lot of money to buy property for cash.
Right, especially these days.
Yeah.
The markets aren't really getting any better. Looking at it, and I'm just like, how is this much? But then again, I'm seeing land without anything on it going for what I would consider good prices, and I'm wondering what's up with that as well.
You know, there's something to be said for buying unimproved, putting an Airstream camper on it, and you know, build a house over time, and
yeah, just a generator
double
and
its
a
value. Yeah, yeah.
jug of water will, you know, get you through, especially with the amount of time that I intend to spend there. But yeah, I got to figure it out, and that's something that's where I'm at right now. I'll figure it out probably soon because I know that the people that know that I can afford to buy are going to try to sell. So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if it were me, I would just really try to go somewhere that has a vibrant, like, local food economy. That's a really good way to ensure at least some level of long-term stability. If there's an active farmers market, like, that's a really good sign, you know?
right, that
Yeah.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But then also those places are usually populated, so maybe with too many people, I don't know. I have to figure that out. Let's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
go through the data and then show up and then see if I like it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anywho, I guess I'm curious to ask you because I know you're more active on Twitter. Like, what's the Twitter world like these days? Is it truly like getting better, or is it crazy? How's Elon doing? Is Elon a good guy? I don't know what to think of any of it, frankly. It's all kind of like all the Twitter files. I keep up with it. It's kind of like disheartening, and I don't know if it's better or worse or what to make of it. Should I get on Twitter? Is that where all the action's at? Is that the battleground of tomorrow? Like, what the fuck, you know?
I'm seeing a lot of people get freed, but
Yeah.
they're still experiencing can't say certain things about certain things.
Okay.
So yeah, they're still censoring, and then I've also noticed a lot more. It's since that veil came off, since they unlocked that door, all kinds of porn came in. I see so much more porn in the
Weird.
last couple months. But yeah, hopefully I know that they recognize that they have a problem with the really, really disgusting criminal type of porn,
Do you
and
think that might
hopefully they're
be
going after that. But the regular stuff is showing up a lot more.
why do you think that is? Like, I guess
I think
part of me wonders if that could be some kind of like intentional, like somebody doing it to Twitter to try to like disrupt it, or
wow, you're more conspiratorial than
like
me.
spam. I mean, spamming with porn is nothing new though, right? Like,
Yeah. Well, my opinion, and this is probably one of the more normie things that I could think is that they had all these de-elevate things on people that they had built up over the years. And I've noticed I get interaction in a chat room with 150 people on Telegram. So I say something in there and I'll end up getting tons of likes on it because it's solid take, right? I'll say the same exact thing on Twitter, get maybe two, and a lot of those two are the same people that are in that chat room. So, so I'm pretty sure that I've been de-elevated, and I could be wrong. I'm sure that a lot of people just think that it's got to be somebody on the outside and not that no one's interested in what you got to say. But yeah, it's I think that the de-elevate thing, that they just turned off that gate for some people, and then they turned it on other people. Because yeah, my interaction has been pretty bad.
Yeah, I never was very active on Twitter, but I know that's like where a lot of the action is. So I'm tempted to put my toe in the water, but it's like, is it even worthwhile? It seems kind of chaotic at the moment. Like,
I think it's fun. It's it's a way to see what the current news is and see what people are saying about it. I'm in an echo chamber, and I've willed myself into it. If I see certain kinds of takes that I don't want to have anything to do with, I'll mute them, block them, whatever I have to do. Like I know that they were trying to cram like JoJo from Jersey down everybody's throat. I'm like, mute, don't want to see this. And then you see these characters like this whole Andrew Tate fiasco. They blew him up. I mean, they did that all on purpose. There is no freaking way that wasn't manufactured.
Yeah, I'd never heard of the guy till about 3 or 4 months before he got arrested. Like, why? I don't give a fuck. I really don't.
Right.
Like, I don't care.
It's so funny because I hadn't heard of him at all, and then one day I'm in an Uber and the driver's talking about him, and the next thing I know, he's all over Twitter, and then the next thing I know, he's canceled. So that was how it was one of those rises that makes you suspicious. And yeah, I'm completely suspicious of that guy. Especially knowing what we know about him. I don't think he's necessarily Epstein level, but he's probably tied into that network in some way.
Could be.
And that's what it looks like to me, at least at this point. And we'll see what happens with that. A whole bunch of people think he might just be getting persecuted because he says base things about women. But I mean, those kind of things have been said on this show, and we haven't gotten any persecution, but we also haven't gotten reach.
Well, you didn't commit the mortal sin of talking back to Greta Thunberg,
I don't think she would respond if I did.
No, she wouldn't. She would not. But dude, it's just one more level of like these stories that are put in front of us that are just like, what, man? Like, what's the point of any of it? It's silly. I don't know, man. I try not to get emotionally invested in like anything I hear anymore. And it gives you a headache just to even try to block it because it's so in your face. And it's like I'm starting to believe more and more that we are maybe heading towards this world where most people decide to plug into a matrix of sorts, like voluntarily, just to get some like peace and like, ooh, I'd rather go live in a fantasy than address what's happening in real life, because real life is crazy and chaotic, and it's hard to make sense of. I hope we don't end up in Wall-E, but that's where I think we might be in not so long. You know,
That's exactly the type of dystopia I expect.
Oh man, a bunch of plugged in fatties riding around on, you know, rascal scooters, like with soda pop, like on an IV drip. You know,
So
like,
you've seen the stuff from the World Economic Forum where they're talking about 15-minute cities, which is not necessarily a bad idea. I mean, that's kind of what you want in any kind of community that you're building is 15 minutes to the grocery store, 15 minutes
right.
to this and that and everything that you need, right? It's very convenient, but yeah, it's not necessarily a bad thing. But I think that whole thing is built on the agenda to keep everybody in the same space. They want you to stay in your zone. They'll have things that are telling you that you're getting out of your zone. Most people rely on their phones so much that it'll just geolocate you, and drones will turn you back. They'll come down and be like, citizen, get out of here. You know, it's really easy to put this barless prison in place with the kind of technology that we have.
Yeah, we're gonna turn off your electric stove and your electric car, and you've run out of ESG points, so you're on citizens or you're on house arrest for the next 10 days or whatever. We'll deliver some gruel every morning, and that's what you get. It's terrifying to think that might honestly happen, but people seem to just like be letting it happen. I get a little bit I don't know, I get angry just thinking about the lack of pushback in general. It's a small number of us, it seems like. Like, why are people not up in arms already?
They don't tell everybody. You know,
Well,
we have to go digging. We have to watch really boring videos with bad music and bad acting to see what they're up to.
yeah.
And you know, we spread it around in our little echo chambers and stuff like that. But then whenever it comes out to the normies have been conditioned to accept it. I think that we're going to get really deep into the gas stove thing tomorrow, whenever I'm doing the show with Rob. But from here, I think that the reason they want to take away your gas, and they want to take away your gas car, it's the same thing. It's, you know, the gas car isn't plugged in to the smart appliance network, so so your gas stove's not plugged in the same way. So they can sit here and monitor your usage of normal household items, and people connected their washing machine to their Wi-Fi without even thinking about it. They were like, "Oh, this is cool. It connects to the Wi-Fi." What? Why the hell would you do that?
Yeah. You need your phone to go off when your dryer's done, like when you're in the other room, or like what you have to know. Yeah, it doesn't make it doesn't make much sense on a practical level. I'm glad to have old trucks and, you know, old shit. You know, shit, I just fumbled, but it's like nothing I have is connected to the Wi-Fi except for this laptop and this phone, and I'm glad to keep it that way. Even that's too much at times. You know, if I wasn't choosing to like be a content creator, I'd be tempted to just be done with all of it. You know, but it's easier said than done.
And you have all the skills and knowledge to survive out there for a long time.
Oh, I don't know about that. It's not as easy as it sounds, you know. We all try to kid ourselves, but we're not half the men our ancestors were, really. At least not yet. But in some ways I think we're being called to be, right? Like go back a little bit to that more primal lifestyle. You know, kill what you eat and take care of yourself, right?
Yeah, I think that's the bifurcation of the situation, is that they've got guys that are like us that have been experiencing the good times that make weak men and becoming weak men because of it. And now, you know, so we've figured a few things out. We haven't figured it all out by any stretch. But they want to funnel all those weak men and reward them for their weakness into those smart cities where they connect their appliances to their Wi-Fi and get rid of their gas appliances because they want to cut you off. And that's the thing is, if you got an electric car, the electric car, it can not only do they have kill switches, they can tell them to go where they want them to go. They can tell them to just drive you up straight to the police because you broke your carbon allowance. It's not just oh well, this person did a crime and they're in trouble. The thing is, they're making up crimes. They're creating crimes at this point, especially with the rampant environmentalism. And it's not even environmental at all, but they're making up their own crimes, and they can just sit here and arrest people for things that are just surviving, just being a person or whatever.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for like they're basically trying to make existence criminal without like jumping through X number of hoops.
Great meme once said, this meme that I read said, "You're the carbon they're trying to reduce."
Right. At the same time, though, they're trying to fatten us up. Maybe we're part of the sequestration program, right? Like, let's stuff as much carbon into this entity before we bury it. Except that wouldn't work. Most of us get cremated, so we go right back up there.
This is a new thing, and you may or may not have heard of it, but in several states, they've started making human composting a thing.
Right. I have heard about this. Yeah.
Welcome to Soylent Green, y'all.
Well, the thing about that is, yeah, it is. It's kind of, I see the appeal of the idea, right? Like I've said before, like put me in a wooden box, plant an oak tree on top of me. Like I want to break down into the soil. Like I don't want to be embalmed. I don't want to be encased in concrete. I don't want to be encased in steel. But where it gets a little twisted is when they start saying, we're going to compost you and then reintegrate your biomatter into the food system and feed that to other people. It's kind of icky and kind of sacrilegious in a lot of ways. And like, just, it goes against like, sort of treating the dead with respect, right? Like,
right.
It's one thing to say, I want to be broken down into the earth and have a tree grow over top of me. It's another thing to say, I want to be turned into lettuce and fed to my neighbors, like that's kind of weird.
That's extremely weird. And they'll introduce it. They won't even tell you. There's so many things that they'll just sneak up on you. I've noticed food. I'll read the ingredients and then notice that it's been bioengineered or something like that. And I'm not eating that. But in this case, they might not even tell you.
Well, and that's the thing. I buy compost in bulk, like from a variety of places. And as a gardener, I'll tell you, I really don't want to get to the point someday where I'm, spreading compost and I come across a fingernail, or a tooth. No, thank you.
Yeah.
Like that'll kind of turn me off to gardening. Let's not ruin a good thing,
Right.
Well, and
that'll be the new name.
Well, what's that? What's the new name?
So they used to call people that like hitmen. They would be like calling a cleaner. Yeah.
Now it's the gardener.
Yeah, calling a gardener.
Yeah. Well, I've always said if you needed to get rid of a body, building a raised bed garden wouldn't be the worst way to do it. I just wouldn't eat out of that garden.
Right.
Yeah, but hiding a body, hey, perfect. You just build it tall enough, cover it with dirt, you're good. Stock it with worms. But no, I think there is a full frontal assault like on our health and on our food system as a whole, and this whole thing about they want us fat and stupid, like, because it's so easy to fatten up a bunch of people on sugar, you know, when all we're growing is corn, they have to feed it to something. You know, we're just kind of like, they're treating us as cattle for their surplus of grain, and you know, just a convenient way to take, you know, pennies and turn them into dollars, basically, via corn syrup. It's really disgusting when you boil it down. And you know, I hear about how like the American Diabetes Association, you know, is basically like in partnership with kidney like dialysis clinics and stuff. Like the revenue from diabetes funds the Diabetes Association, which is kind of weird. And like a lot of their advice is very wrong. If you take advice from the Diabetes Association, you're eating way too much sugar based on like their recommendations. They talk about this on No Agenda quite a bit, but it's like same thing with the American Cancer Association. Like it's just kind of shady when they seem more interested in like suing a company for the use of the color pink in reference to breast cancer than they actually seem to like solving the problem of breast cancer. It's just another mega corporation disguised as a charity, and there's so much of that going on. I digress, but like that's why we need to take health and food super, super seriously, because there is no sovereignty without, you know, good health and good nutrition at a like local scale. We're totally at their whim if we don't take control of that.
That's something that I wanted to add to this as well is you're subject to what they're doing. And I'm hearing right now, I was just seeing this on InfoWars, and I'd seen it in a couple other places beforehand, but it looks like they're intending to vaccinate all the livestock, and so they're going to get the mRNA in you one way or another, and that's pretty bad. Then they're talking about vaccines for honeybees. That's really bad.
So you're saying they're going to give the COVID-19 vax to the livestock, like to cattle and sheep and goats? Is that what I'm hearing? Or just a mRNA vax?
I think that they're just going to change the format of vaccines to mRNA, and then they'll just give them whatever they feel like shooting them up again. So yeah, it's really sketchy. And if you're following the ag issues that we're having, then you know that they killed off a bunch of birds last year for the avian flu that they made up with their PCR tests. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely an assault. This is really big, and it's incredible. Really, is how you stop the food supply or taint the food supply for such a robust society. I mean, really, we live in probably the greatest society ever made, and here they are actively doing things to destroy it. And you don't find Billy Gates too far away from any of this stuff. He's got either his hand in it, or he's paying the people that do.
Yeah. You know, it's almost too complex to even summarize. Like, yeah, Bill Gates is a part of it. Yeah, like Monsanto's a part of it. You know, I tend to try to like get almost beyond conspiracy and just recognize that these are infinitely complex systems that are basically self-perpetuating like feedback loops of evil if left unchecked. And if we allow them to, you know, we're feeding the beast by consuming what they sell us, right? You know, we're part of the problem. Like it's definitely. So there are definitely conspiracies, but like I think it's helpful to recognize that there doesn't necessarily have to be a conspiracy to everything, like for it to be real and for it to be happening and for it to be bad. You know, is the American Diabetes Association actually evil? I don't think so. Are they evil by virtue of being a bureaucracy with basically self-interested individuals at their core? That's it. It's what they call like the iron law of bureaucracy. Have we ever talked about this, or have you ever heard of this?
I don't think you and I have discussed it, and I've heard of it, but go ahead and explain it.
The premise is that, like, when it comes to bureaucracy, there's two types of people. There's people who serve the mission, and there's people who serve the bureaucracy itself, right? So whether that be like schools, you have the teachers that are trying to teach kids, generally, not all of them, but some of them do try. And then you have the administrators who don't teach, who don't educate in any capacity. They serve the beast itself. And sort of the law states that, when a bureaucracy gets to a certain size, it ceases to fulfill its own mission. It simply fulfills its own interests. It becomes a perpetuating, self-defending organism that kind of loses track of the mission at hand and serves only the existence of itself. And that's what we have. That's what we have a lot of times with these, whether it be government or massive corporations. These bureaucracies are just, they're off the rails.
And they find success and failure most of the time. So what happens is they'll drop the ball on some scenario, and then then all the Congress critters, they'll get out there and say, hey, well, these guys need more money, so they don't drop the ball again. And that might create an entirely new bureaucracy, a new department, or just get hella funding into their department. So failing is not necessarily unsuccessful for them. They fail and become successful out of it. So for instance, think of 9/11. We didn't have a Department of Homeland Security until then, right? Mm-hmm. And now look at them. They're in almost everything. And so they created this entire department out of this scenario for situations that we already had handled by other departments. But they said, handling this is just too much work. Let's create a team that's dedicated to this one specific thing, and then we'll spread them as thin as possible.
Well, it almost like, I almost wonder, this might be kind of hard to phrase, but I'll be curious to get your response. Like, what percentage do you think, when it comes to things that we might consider conspiracies, what percentage of them do you think are a reaction, i.e. like a cover up to a fuck up of some kind, versus something like proactive? Like, how many conspiracies are trying to undo a mistake versus trying to proactively like induce some desired outcome?
So you'll see a lot of the stuff that was put in motion over the last couple of years with this virus was in legislation back in 2005. I know specifically 2005, but the years before that, they laid up the groundwork, and then the crisis shows up. And so the crisis shows up, and then they start using all this stuff that's been sitting there for 15, 20 years. So I think, for instance, when you look at certain kinds of crises, I'm thinking of George Floyd, for instance, that whole situation. Mm-hmm. Now, if you need a crisis of somebody getting killed by the police, that happens every single day. You can just highlight that one. You just got to get the good footage of it. So you don't necessarily make something like that happen. You just put a whole lot of energy into that one thing that happened. There's so many more people that have died in so many less just ways since then. They're not focusing on it. They're not interested in it. This served their agenda. So they had every camera they could possibly point on it, and then they got what they wanted out of it. So I don't know. how many things that we're dealing with, if they were created or if they just emphasize them.
Well, and again, maybe it's more, I'm probably oversimplifying it even with that question. It's probably more like a self-perpetuating kind of domino effect, right? One fuck up leads to a cover up, leads to a conspiracy to commit some kind of heinous crime to get ahead of the next thing that got screwed up, whatever, so on and so forth. And it just keeps snowballing until, it's kind of like we're in this phase of like standing like dumbfounded, looking around like, how'd we get here? Like, how did this insane amount of bureaucracy even get built? Like, how did the train get this far off the tracks? And it's like, where do you even begin on what to do about it, except to start building, parallel societies and parallel structures. Again, it makes me, I almost get angry at like previous generations. Like, how'd y'all let us get to this point? You left us with a heck of a mess here, but they were all just going with the flow, following the programming. I don't know, man. Do you think there's like some kind of cycle to this stuff, like some kind of spiritual ebb and flow?
Oh yeah,
that's where I tend to come to when I think about this stuff.
I talked about it with Tunes last weok, but and I mentioned it a little bit earlier in our conversation, that it's that whole great men make good times make weak men make hard times make great men. Right. And we're in that cycle. We're just in an area of a cusp of weak men and good times. And so we're about to see those good times become hard times, because we've got all these Trudeaus out there.
Yeah. Makes sense to me. Patterns are easy enough to recognize. It's knowing how to accommodate to the next stage in the pattern that some people hesitate to even do. Once again, coming back to like people you love that aren't on the same page, as much as you might want to drag them kicking and screaming, it's just not possible. We're whether we like it or not, we're the point. We're at the tip of the spear. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we got to figure it out, and we're running out of time, which is always fun.
Well, no time like the deadline to get it done.
Yeah, there's certain things that I see that are rolling into motion, and I'm thinking, oh well, this is really tight. But before I'm thinking about wrapping up. Are you cool with that?
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Before I go, tell everybody how to find you.
If you want to like send me a message, best place is Instagram. I'm Mike_the_Polymath. If you want to email me, you can go to my website, easypeasygardens.com, and hit the contact tab. If you want to listen to the podcast, it's the Easy Peasy podcast. Easy Peasy is one word, spelled out EASYPEASY. Imagine two little anarchy A's, in Easy Peasy. But look for that Peapod logo. That's kind of my call sign. And yeah, I guess if you're curious, I did write a book since I talked to you last. I'll tell you about that real quick.
There we go.
Called Hayduke 2029. It's available on Amazon, but for some reason it's hard to find in the search. I still need to get that worked out. So you can find it on my link tree on my Instagram. But yeah, it's a novel. It's good fun. Kind of a near future post blackout world where the heroes strive to get to the bottom of the truth and get it out to the rest of the good people of Earth.
Awesome. You talked about that with me a little while ago, but you didn't tell me that the wheels had rolled. So you've finished it. That's badass.
I just kind of hunkered down and got it done. And yeah, spent like a month writing it and a month kind of getting it edited and formatted. And yeah, it's pretty cool process. I think I'll have to start doing, maybe a couple a year writing fiction. It's a good outlet for me. Good compliment to my lifestyle, and a way to kind of spread the ideas in a different form, right? Like a little less directly, but through stories. And in some ways, I think that's almost more effective instead of trying to, jam stuff down people's throat, kind of, give it to them in a palatable way, right?
Right.
Spread the love of freedom in all forms.
Badass. Congratulations. I'm glad that you finished it, and I look forward to getting a copy.
Thanks, man.
And since this is going to be Swapcast and be on yours, I got a link tree, and that is 3xburn, and we talked about Twitter earlier. If you want to find me on Twitter, it's the Doom Kitchen. So there I am. But thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks again. Yep.
In a world where so much of the music has become audible garbage, there is an artist trying to make all that better. From the artist who gave you Truth Be Told and Chasing Midnight comes the ultimate album, Contumacy by Phytophiliac. 6 months in the making, it will make your feet step in the right direction. On January 2nd, 2023, let this album bring you comfort in knowing that you are not alone in a world dominated by government-funded propaganda, outright lies, from those who seek to make you an all-out slave to their greed, corruption, and abuses. Contumacy will be available on major streaming platforms starting January 22nd, 2023.